Rain fell softly on the streets of Neo Seoul. The year was 2157, and the city looked very different from the old pictures in history books. Tall buildings reached up into the clouds, their sides covered in moving pictures and bright lights. Flying cars moved between them like glowing rivers in the sky. In the middle of all this beauty and technology, a very tall man walked slowly through the rain. His name was Tae-won Kim, but that wasn't his real name. Most people would know him better as Shaquille O'Neal, the famous basketball player from 200 years ago. But right now, he didn't look anything like his old self. Tae-won pulled his old, torn coat tighter around his shoulders. The special technology in his skin made him look different, but he was still 7 feet tall. He couldn't change that. It was part of the plan. The people he was looking for would be interested in someone unusual like him. He watched his reflection in a shop window as he passed. The face looking back at him was different from the one he remembered. His new Korean features were perfect. The scientists had done a good job. Only his height remained the same. That and his memories of being Shaquille O'Neal. "Got any spare credits, mister?" a small voice asked. Tae-won looked down. A young boy stood there, holding out a small metal cup. The boy's clothes were dirty and worn, just like Tae-won's disguise. "Sorry, friend," Tae-won said in perfect Korean. His new voice still felt strange to him. "I'm looking for somewhere to sleep myself." The boy looked up at him with big eyes. "You're really tall," he said. "You should try the old basketball court near the river. Lots of us sleep there. The police don't bother us much." Tae-won smiled. Even after 2 centuries, basketball courts were still his home. "Thank you," he said, and reached into his pocket. He found a small piece of real chocolate, a rare thing in 2157. "Here, real cocoa, not the fake stuff." The boy's eyes got even bigger. He took the chocolate carefully, like it was made of gold. "Thanks, mister. I'm Jin-ho." "Tae-won," he said. "Can you tell me how to get to this basketball court?" Jin-ho gave him directions, pointing down streets with names in both Korean and English. As the boy talked, Tae-won noticed something strange. 3 people in clean, expensive suits were watching them from across the street. They stood too still, and their eyes didn't blink. Tae-won remembered his mission briefing. "Watch for people who look too perfect," his handlers had said. "The aliens aren't good at all the little things humans do without thinking." He pretended not to see them, keeping his attention on Jin-ho. But in his mind, he was counting. That made 8 well-dressed people who had watched him too closely since he arrived in Neo Seoul 12 hours ago. 8 people who didn't blink or move quite right. "Thank you, Jin-ho," he said when the boy finished explaining the way. "Be careful out here, okay?" Jin-ho nodded and ran off into the rain, the chocolate held tight in his hand. Tae-won started walking toward the basketball court, but he took a different path than the one Jin-ho had told him. He needed to know if those 3 perfect-looking people would follow him. They did. Tae-won walked through the busy streets, past shops selling food that smelled like home and stores full of technology he was still getting used to. He walked past big screens showing news in many languages. He noticed his followers were always there, always the same distance behind him, moving through the crowd like they were dancing to music only they could hear. After 20 minutes of walking, he finally saw the old basketball court. It sat next to the Han River, which now glowed with tiny lights that cleaned the water. The court looked old but loved. The lines were freshly painted, and someone had put up real nets on the hooves. Around it, he could see about 30 people in worn clothes like his, sheltering under pieces of plastic and metal to stay dry. A woman stood near the entrance to the court. She was cooking something in a big pot, and the smell made Tae-won's stomach growl. She looked up as he got closer, and he saw she was about 40 years old, with kind eyes and a small scar on her chin. "You look hungry," she said. "I'm Hae-yeon. We always have room for one more." Tae-won bowed slightly. "Tae-won," he said. "Thank you. It's been a long day." It's always a long day out here, Hei-yun said. She handed him a bowl of hot soup. It had real vegetables in it. Another rare thing in 2157. You're very tall. Used to play. She pointed at the basketball court. On a screen above it, an old game was playing. Taiwan almost dropped his soup when he saw it. It was him, the old him, playing against the Lakers in 2006. A little, he said carefully, a long time ago. Hei-yun smiled. Well, we play here sometimes. When we're not too tired, it helps us forget our troubles for a while. She looked past him, and her smile fell a little. They're watching again. Taiwan didn't turn around. The ones in the nice suits. Yes, they come here often. Always watching. Always perfect looking. Hei-yun stirred her soup. People disappear sometimes, after they show up. The police don't care. Who misses a few homeless people, right? But someone did miss them. That's why Taiwan was here. Earth's governments had noticed the pattern. Homeless people vanishing from cities all over the world. Always after being seen with well-dressed people who didn't quite look right. Always in places where no one would ask questions. How many? He asked quietly. 12 in the past month, Hei-yun said. Good people, like Jin-ho's sister. Taiwan's hand tightened on his soup bowl. Jin-ho had a sister. Minji. She was 16. Smart girl. She was teaching the younger kids to read. Hei-yun's voice got harder. 3 of those perfect people talked to her 2 weeks ago. No one has seen her since. Taiwan looked up at the screen, where his younger self was dunking a basketball. He had been famous then. Important. But maybe this was the most important game he would ever play. You should be careful, Hei-yun said. They like people who stand out. People who are different. She looked at his height again. People like you. I know, Taiwan said. And he did know. That's exactly why he was here. He sat down near the court and ate his soup. It was good. Hei-yun was a great cook. As he ate, he watched the people around him. They looked out for each other, shared what little they had, told jokes and stories. They were a family, and something was hunting them. The 3 watchers stayed until it got dark. More came to replace them, all wearing those perfect suits, all moving with that strange dance-like walk. Taiwan counted 5 more disappearing into the shadows around the court. He pulled his coat tighter and found a spot to sleep near the court's fence. Hei-yun had given him some cardboard to lie on and an old blanket that smelled clean. As he lay down, he touched the small button hidden behind his ear, the one that would let him send messages to his handlers. Day 1, he whispered in English, so quietly that even someone standing next to him wouldn't hear. Made contact with the local community. Confirmed alien presence. They're watching me, just like we planned. Request permission to proceed with Phase 2. The answer came as a soft buzz in his ear. 1 buzz for yes. Taiwan closed his eyes but didn't sleep. Around him, the sounds of the city mixed with the quiet breathing of the homeless community. Above him, the screen still played old basketball games, and in the shadows, eyes that never blinked watched it all. Tomorrow, he would give them what they were waiting for. Tomorrow, he would stand out even more. Tomorrow, the real game would begin. But tonight, he listened to the rain and thought about Minji, the girl who taught children to read. He thought about Jin-ho, who might never see his sister again. He thought about Hei-yun, who fed strangers and watched her friends disappear. Shaquille O'Neal had played many games in his life, had won championships, had been a hero to millions. But now, disguised as Taiwan Kim, he was playing the most important game of his life. And the stakes were much higher than any basketball championship. He just hoped he wouldn't let these people down. Because in this game, losing meant more than just a mark in the record books. Losing meant more people would disappear into the night, taken by creatures who looked human but didn't know how to blink. As he lay there, pretending to sleep, a soft voice floated through the rain. Sweet dreams, tall stranger, Hei-yun called from her cooking spot. Tomorrow is another day. Yes, Ta-won whispered to himself in English. Tomorrow is another day. And tomorrow, we start finding out what happened to Minji. The rain kept falling. The games kept playing on the screen. And in the shadows, the watchers kept watching, not knowing that the person they were watching was watching them right back. The game had begun. The morning sun tried to break through Neo-Seoul's heavy clouds. Taiwan woke up exactly when he planned to, though he hadn't really slept. His back hurt from lying on the hard ground, but that was good. The pain would help him play his part better. Hei-yun was already awake, stirring a pot of morning rice. The smell made Ta-won's stomach growl. As he stood up, he made sure to move like his joints hurt. That wasn't hard. Even with all the modern medicine in his body, sleeping on concrete wasn't comfortable. "Good morning, tall stranger," Hei-yun said, spooning rice into a bowl. "Hungry?" Taiwan nodded and walked to her cooking area. He could feel eyes on him. Not just the homeless people's eyes, but the cold stares of the watchers in their perfect suits. Today there were 4 of them, standing in different spots around the basketball court. "Thank you," he said, taking the bowl. "You're very kind to feed everyone." Hei-yun smiled, but her eyes were serious. "Someone has to care," she said. "The city doesn't." As they talked, Jin-ho ran up to them. The boy looked excited. "Ta-won, you're still here. Want to see something cool?" Tai-won finished his rice and nodded. Jin-ho grabbed his hand and pulled him toward the basketball court. The boy was so small that his hand barely wrapped around 2 of Tai-won's fingers. "Watch this." Jin-ho picked up an old basketball and tried to dribble it. The ball didn't bounce well on the cracked concrete, but Jin-ho kept trying. "I've been practicing. Hei-yun says I might be good someday." Tai-won watched the boy play. In his mind, he saw himself at that age, learning the game that would change his life. Without thinking, he said, "You're holding the ball wrong." Jin-ho stopped dribbling. "Really?" Tai-won knelt down. "Here, hold it like this." He showed Jin-ho how to position his hands. "Now try." The ball bounced better this time. Jin-ho's face lit up with a huge smile. "Wow, you must have played a lot." "A long time ago," Tai-won said. He noticed the watchers had moved closer. Good, this was part of his plan, to stand out, to make them interested. For the next hour, Tai-won taught Jin-ho some basic basketball moves. More children joined them, and soon he had 8 kids trying to dribble balls on the cracked court. He kept his movements slow and a bit clumsy, like someone who used to be good but had fallen on hard times. Hei-yun watched from her cooking area. Something about the way the tall stranger moved bothered her. He was trying to look out of practice, but sometimes his real skill showed through. When he thought no one was watching, his movements were perfect. Around noon, one of the watchers finally made a move. A woman in a blue suit walked up to the court. She moved like she was floating, her feet barely touching the ground. Her smile was as perfect as her clothes, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You play very well," she said to Tai-won. Her voice was like music, but empty of feeling. Even after all this time, Tai-won pretended to be embarrassed. "Not anymore. Bad knees. Bad back. Everything's bad when you sleep on concrete." The woman's head tilted exactly 45 degrees. "We might be able to help with that. My organization helps people who have fallen on hard times." "Thanks, but I'm okay," Tai-won said. He turned back to the children. "Are you sure?" the woman asked. "We have very good doctors. They could fix your knees, your back, everything." Before Tai-won could answer, Hei-yun's voice cut through the air. "Leave him alone." Everyone turned to look at her. She stood with her cooking spoon pointed at the woman in the suit like it was a weapon. "We know what happens to people who go with you. No one ever sees them again." The woman's perfect smile didn't change. "I don't know what you mean. We only want to help. Like you helped Minji." Hei-yun's voice shook with anger. Like you helped all the others. The woman looked at Hei-yun for exactly 3 seconds, then turned and walked away. Her movements were still perfect, but now they seemed more like a machine than a dance. Hei-yun waited until the woman was gone, then grabbed Tae-won's arm. Come with me. Now. She pulled him away from the court, into a small space between 2 buildings. The walls were covered in old posters for basketball games. Tae-won tried not to look at them too closely. Some of them showed his face from 200 years ago. Listen to me, Hei-yun said in a whisper. You need to leave. Today. They've noticed you. I can take care of myself, Tae-won said. No, you don't understand. Hei-yun looked around to make sure they were alone. They take the special ones first. The ones who stand out. Min-ji stood out because she was smart. Others stood out because they were strong, or tall, or different in some way. She looked up at his height. Like you. Tae-won put his hand on her shoulder. Hei-yun, why do you stay here? You're smart. You take care of everyone. You could have a better life. She pushed his hand away. Someone has to watch out for these people. Someone has to remember the ones who disappear. She pulled something from her pocket. A small notebook made of real paper. I write down their names. Their stories. Someone has to remember them. Tae-won looked at the notebook. In neat handwriting, Hei-yun had written down names, dates, descriptions. She had drawn pictures of the people who disappeared. The last entry was Min-ji's. 37, Hei-yun said. That's how many have disappeared just from this court in the past year. The police say they probably just moved to other cities. But I know better. I've seen the patterns. What patterns? Hei-yun opened her notebook to a map she had drawn. They always come in 3s or 4s, always in those perfect suits. They watch for a few days, then they approach someone. They offer help, medical care, jobs, homes. If the person says no, they try again the next day, and the next, until the person disappears. Tae-won finished. Yes. Hei-yun closed her notebook. And now, they're watching you. Tae-won looked back at the court. The watchers were still there, their eyes never blinking. Jin-ho was showing the other kids how to hold the ball the way Tae-won had taught him. Maybe that's not a bad thing, Tae-won said quietly. Hei-yun grabbed his arm again. What do you mean? Maybe someone needs to find out where they take people. He kept his voice very low. Maybe someone needs to disappear on purpose. Hei-yun's eyes got wide. You're not just some homeless man, are you? Tae-won smiled. No, but it's better if you don't know more than that. You'll disappear too, she said. Maybe. But I might find out what happened to Min-ji, to all of them. He looked at her notebook. Someone has to do more than remember. Someone has to find them. Hei-yun was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, the woman in the blue suit will be back tomorrow. They always come back the next day. I know. If you disappear, she held out her notebook. At least let me write down your story first, so someone remembers you too. Tae-won looked at the notebook, thinking about his real story, about who he really was, about everything that had brought him to this moment. Write this down, he said. Tae-won Kim, tall man who taught children basketball, disappeared trying to help find the others. That's all. That's enough. He smiled. The rest doesn't matter. They walked back to the court together. The watchers were still there, their perfect suits clean despite the dirty air, their eyes still never blinking. Jin-ho ran up to them. Tae-won. Look, I can dribble with both hands now. Tae-won watched the boy play, knowing that tomorrow he would probably never see him again, but maybe if his plan worked, he could make sure no more children disappeared from this court. The watchers stayed until dark. More came to replace them, just like yesterday. But tonight, Tae-won knew they were watching him more closely. Tonight, they were getting ready to make their move. As he lay down on his cardboard bed, He touched the button behind his ear. "Phase 2 ready," he whispered in English. "They'll make contact again tomorrow. Permission to proceed with disappearance protocol." The answer came as two soft buzzes. "Yes, but be careful." Hye-yeon walked past him, carrying her cooking pots to her sleeping spot. "Sweet dreams, tall stranger," she said, just like yesterday. But tonight she added something else, so quietly he almost didn't hear it. "Come back alive." Tae-won closed his eyes and smiled. Tomorrow, he would start to unravel the mystery. Tomorrow, he would let them take him. But tonight, he had one more thing to do. He got up quietly and walked to the basketball court. In the dark, he picked up a ball and started to dribble. His perfect movements would show up on the watcher's night vision. His skill would be impossible to hide. Let them see, he thought. Let them want to take me even more. The game was about to change. And Tae-won Kim, who was really Shaquille O'Neal, was ready to play. The next morning came with heavy rain. Tae-won sat under the basketball court's metal roof, watching water pour down around him. He had been awake for hours, knowing that today would change everything. Hye-yeon worked at her cooking pot nearby, but she kept looking at him with worried eyes. She knew something was going to happen too. The watchers had doubled in number. 8 of them now stood around the court in their perfect suits, not caring about the rain. "You should eat something," Hye-yeon said, bringing him a bowl of soup. "You'll need your strength." Tae-won took the bowl with a smile. "Thank you for everything, Hye-yeon." She sat down next to him, speaking very quietly. "It's not too late to leave. I know some safe places." "No," he said. "It's time to find out the truth." As if his words had called her, the woman in the blue suit appeared again. She walked through the rain, but not a single drop seemed to touch her. Her perfect smile was exactly the same as yesterday. "Have you thought about our offer?" she asked. Tae-won stood up slowly, making sure to look tired and weak. "What kind of help are you talking about?" The woman's smile got wider, but her eyes stayed empty. "We have a special program for people with your unique qualities. Medical care, food, shelter. A chance to use your skills again." "My skills are gone," Tae-won said. "Bad knees, remember?" "Oh, we can fix that." The woman held out a card with an address on it. "Come to this place tonight. We'll show you everything." Hye-yeon grabbed Tae-won's arm. "Don't go. Remember, Minji." The woman looked at Hye-yeon with those empty eyes. "Your friend will be fine. We take very good care of our guests." Tae-won took the card slowly. "Tonight, at 8 o'clock." The woman turned to leave, then stopped. "Oh, and please come alone. We like to keep our program private." After she left, Hye-yeon tried one more time to stop him. "Please," she said. "I've written down too many names in my notebook. I don't want to write yours too." Tae-won put his hand on her shoulder. "Trust me," he whispered. "I'm not what I seem." Hye-yeon looked into his eyes for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "There's something I need to show you," she said, "before you go." She led him away from the court through narrow streets he hadn't seen before. They walked for 20 minutes, going deeper into the old part of the city where the tall buildings gave way to older structures made of brick and stone. Finally, they stopped at what looked like an abandoned store. Hye-yeon touched a hidden panel in the wall, and a door slid open silently. "Come inside," she said, quickly. The room behind the door was full of computers and screens. Maps covered the walls, with red dots marking locations all over the city. Pictures of missing people were everywhere, including one of Minji. "What is this place?" Tae-won asked, though he was starting to understand. Hye-yeon sat down at one of the computers. "I'm not just a soup kitchen worker," she said. "I'm a reporter. I've been tracking these disappearances for 2 years." She typed quickly on the computer, and more maps appeared. "It's not just Neo-Seoul. It's happening in every major city on Earth. People disappearing after being approached by perfect-looking strangers in suits." Taiwan watched as she showed him more evidence. Pictures, videos, documents. How did you find all this? I started investigating after my brother disappeared, Hei-yun said quietly. He was like you. Tall, athletic. They took him 6 months ago. She pointed to a picture on the wall. That's him. Do-jin. Taiwan looked at the picture. The man in it was smiling, wearing a basketball jersey. I'm sorry, he said. Don't be sorry. Help me find him. Hei-yun turned to face him. I know you're not really homeless. I know someone sent you to investigate. I've been watching you move. You're too well trained to be just some former basketball player. Taiwan was quiet for a moment. Then he touched the hidden button behind his ear. Base, request permission to bring in an asset. Local reporter with extensive evidence. A single buzz came back. Yes, you're right, he said to Hei-yun. I'm not who I seem to be. I was sent here to find out where these people are being taken, and why. By who? I can't tell you that, but I can tell you we're on the same side. He looked at her wall of evidence. We need to work together. Hei-yun stood up and walked to a cabinet. She opened it and pulled out what looked like a normal jacket. Take this, she said. It has cameras and tracking devices built in. Whatever you see tonight, I'll see too. They'll scan for devices, Taiwan said. No, they won't find these. Hei-yun smiled. Because they're not human technology. I have other sources. Taiwan raised his eyebrows. Other sources. Let's just say you're not the only one investigating the disappearances. She helped him put on the jacket. There are others who want to stop them. Others who aren't from Earth. This was new information. Taiwan touched his ear button again, knowing his handlers would want to know about these others. The people in suits, he said. What do you know about them? Hei-yun turned back to her computers. They call themselves the Yun Collective. They look human, but they're not. They're made of living silicon, like walking, thinking computers. They're interested in humans because we can do something they can't. What's that? Adapt, Hei-yun said. Change. Grow stronger from hardship. They don't understand how we do it. That's why they take people who stand out. Athletes, scholars, survivors. They want to study how we overcome difficulties. Taiwan thought about this. And your brother? He was a champion weightlifter before he ended up on the streets. He could still lift more than anyone, even after living rough for years. Hei-yun's voice got quiet. They want to know how humans keep their strength through hard times. That's why they're interested in the homeless, Taiwan said, understanding now. Because they survived despite everything. Yes, and that's why they'll take you tonight. Hei-yun looked at him seriously. But you won't be alone. I'll be watching through the cameras. And I have friends, powerful friends, who will be ready to help if things go wrong. Taiwan checked the time. 6 hours until the meeting. I need to know everything you know about where they take people. Every detail could matter. For the next 5 hours, Hei-yun showed him everything she had learned. Maps of possible locations, security patterns, strange energy readings that her friends had detected. As 7 o'clock approached, they walked back to the basketball court. The rain had stopped, but the air felt heavy with what was coming. Jin-ho ran up to them as soon as they appeared. Taiwan, where were you? I've been practicing. Taiwan knelt down to the boy's level. Listen, Jin-ho, I have to go away for a while. But I promise I'm going to try to find your sister. Jin-ho's eyes got wide. Really? You know where Minji is? Not yet, but I'm going to find out. He pulled the old basketball from his coat. Keep practicing while I'm gone, okay? The boy took the ball, holding it like it was precious. You'll come back, right? Taiwan looked at Hei-yun, then back at Jin-ho. I'll try my best. At 7:30, he started walking toward the address on the card. Hei-yun's jacket felt warm against his skin, filled with technology he didn't understand from allies he hadn't known existed until today. Be careful, Hei-yun had said as he left. And remember, whatever you see in there, you're not alone. As he walked through the darkening streets, Taiwan thought about everything he had learned. The Yun Collective, Hei-yun's secret work, her mysterious alien allies. This game was bigger than he had imagined. He touched the button behind his ear one last time. Heading to target location now. New intel suggests alien involvement on both sides. Request guidance. 3 buzzes came back. Proceed with extreme caution. The building ahead was tall and dark, with windows that seemed to swallow light instead of reflect it. Perfect-looking people in perfect suits stood guard at the entrance. Taiwan straightened his shoulders and walked forward. The woman in the blue suit was waiting for him, her empty smile exactly as wide as before. "Welcome," she said. "We're so glad you decided to join us." The doors opened silently, revealing a hallway that seemed to go down forever. The game was changing again. But this time, Taiwan wasn't just playing for Earth's governments. He was playing for Hei-yun, for her missing brother, for Minji, and for every person who had disappeared into this building. He stepped through the doors, ready to find answers. Behind him, hidden in Hei-yun's special jacket, dozens of alien cameras began recording everything. The real game was about to begin. The hallways seemed to go down forever. Taiwan followed the woman in the blue suit, counting his steps and memorizing every turn. The walls were smooth and white, but they felt wrong somehow. When he looked closely, he could see tiny patterns moving under the surface, like circuits in a computer. "Our facility is quite extensive," the woman said, her perfect smile never changing. "We have helped many people here." "How many?" Taiwan asked, thinking of Hei-yun's notebook full of names. "Oh, hundreds." The woman's head tilted at that exact 45-degree angle again. "They're all very happy here." They stopped at a large door. When it opened, Taiwan saw a room full of medical equipment. Everything was clean and shiny. But like the walls, something felt wrong about it all. "First, we'll need to examine you," the woman said. "Standard procedure." Taiwan touched his jacket slightly, knowing Hei-yun was watching through the hidden cameras. "What kind of examination?" "Nothing to worry about. We just need to understand your physical condition better." The woman gestured to what looked like a hospital bed. "Please, lie down." Instead of moving to the bed, Taiwan looked around the room carefully. "Where are the other people you've helped? I'd like to meet them first." The woman's smile flickered for just a moment, the first real change he'd seen in her expression. "They're resting now. You'll meet them later." "Like Minji?" Taiwan asked. "Or Du-jin?" The smile disappeared completely. Other figures in suits entered the room, moving with that same strange, perfect grace. They surrounded Taiwan, their eyes all focusing on him at exactly the same time. "You've been asking questions," the woman said. Her voice had changed, becoming more mechanical. "That's not part of the procedure." "I have more questions," Taiwan said. He stood up straighter, letting some of his real strength show. "Like why the Yun Collective is so interested in humans who survive hard times." The woman's head snapped up. "How do you know that name?" "I know a lot of things." Taiwan looked at each of the figures around him. "I know you're not human. I know you're made of living silicon. And I know you've been taking people to study them." "Fascinating," a new voice said. Everyone turned to see a tall man entering the room. He wore a black suit that seemed to absorb light, and his movements were even more perfect than the others. "You're much more interesting than we thought." The man walked closer, studying Taiwan with eyes that looked like polished metal. "I am Du-hyun, leader of this facility." "And you?" He smiled, but it looked like something a computer would draw. "You are not what you appear to be." "Neither are you," Taiwan said. Do-hyun laughed, but the sound was wrong, like music played slightly out of tune. "True, we've learned to look human, but we're something far more advanced." He waved his hand. and the walls of the room seemed to ripple. "We've been studying your species for a long time. You're fascinating creatures, so fragile, yet so resilient. Where are the people you've taken?" Taiwan demanded. "They're here, safe, learning to be better." Do-hyun walked in a perfect circle around Taiwan. "We're helping them reach their full potential, just as we'll help you. By experimenting on them, by understanding them, understanding you." Do-hyun stopped in front of Taiwan. "Humans become stronger through struggle. You adapt, change, grow. We want to know how." Taiwan thought about Hae-yun's words about adaptation, about Jin-ho practicing basketball despite having nothing, about all the homeless people sharing what little they had. "You can't understand it by studying us like lab animals," he said. "No." Do-hyun's metal eyes gleamed. "Then perhaps we need a different approach, a test, maybe, a game." Taiwan felt his heart beat faster. This was unexpected, but it might be exactly what he needed. "What kind of game?" Do-hyun smiled that computer-drawn smile again. "We've watched you on the basketball court, teaching children, moving with such careful restraint, but we can see what you're hiding." He stepped closer. "You're a warrior in disguise, an athlete pretending to be broken." "I'm just an old basketball player," Taiwan said, but he let his posture change slightly, showing more of his true self. "No." Do-hyun's eyes flashed. "You're much more. So let's play a game. You and me, one-on-one." The other figures in suits moved back, forming a circle around them. The room itself seemed to change, the floor transforming into a basketball court surface. "What are the stakes?" Taiwan asked. "If you win, we'll show you everything. Where the others are, what we're really doing here, and we'll let you leave with that information." Do-hyun held up a hand, and a basketball appeared in it. "But if I win, you stay here, forever, and we'll learn all your secrets." Taiwan pretended to think it over, but inside, he was smiling. This was perfect. The jacket Hae-yun gave him would record everything. And basketball. Well, they had no idea who they were really challenging. "How do I know you'll keep your word?" he asked. "We are beings of pure logic," Do-hyun said. "We cannot lie. It would be inefficient." Taiwan nodded slowly. "First to 20 points. First to 10. By twos. Must win by 4. Do-hyun bounced the ball. It made no sound when it hit the floor. "Do you accept?" Taiwan touched his jacket one last time, knowing Hae-yun was watching. Then he reached up and pressed the button behind his ear 3 times, the signal to his handlers that he was about to do something dangerous but necessary. "I accept," he said. The room changed more, growing larger. Lights came down from the ceiling, bright and cold. The other figures in suits moved back further, becoming a perfect circle of watchers. Do-hyun bounced the ball again, still silently. "Your species loves games," he said. "You create artificial challenges to test yourselves, to grow stronger." He caught the ball and held it. "We want to understand why." "Then let's play," Taiwan said. "You might learn something." Do-hyun smiled his wrong smile one more time. "Oh, we will. We'll learn everything about you." The ball flew through the air, and the game began. But this wasn't just any game. This was a game for the truth, for Minji and Doo-jin, and all the others who had disappeared. And Taiwan, who had once been Shaquille O'Neal, was ready to show these beings exactly what human adaptation really meant. The real game was about to begin, and everything would change with the next bounce of the ball.